Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to start off this video by showing you what's in the background of the last video and all the future videos to come. This is a library that we completed construction on 3 weeks ago. This library will hold, I'm estimating 800 to 900 books, but as you can see, there's a lot of tchotchkes and picture frames and other stuff, so it will not hold that many. It would have to be kind of like the books that are over there, just back to back in order to hold that many books. So what got me started in reading was my wife is a big reader, and hopefully she'll agree to do a video with me sometime soon, but she really doesn't like the camera that much, but she does do a lot of reading. And I went with her to the library, and I was looking at all the books in the new section, and I happened to find a small one, and the name of it was The Heart in Winter by Kevin Barry. So I'm like, I'll give it a shot. I had a little bit of a reading stint about 20 years ago, and it only lasted about 10 books. So I picked that one up, brought it home, read about 2 paragraphs, and I'm like, this isn't for me. So she goes, why don't you try this book? She gave me The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. That was a quick read. I really loved it. I enjoyed it. And ever since then, that just jump-started me into reading. And I think for 2024, since the middle of September, I had read 26 books. And now so far in January, I think I just completed my 12th book. So I'm really enjoying it. And we'll see what happens. I'm getting into more and more genres. I log everything on Goodreads that I read, and I'm get a lot of recommendations from there. So I'll just pan around here and you could get an idea of what the library looks like. That's the top of it there. And yeah, and this does make a great place to actually read books too, being surrounded by all the books in here. So now that you know a little bit more about the backstory on what got me started in this, I hope it's a reading career and not just something that lasts a short span, but now you know a little bit more about that, and now let's get on to this week's video. Okay, everybody, let's get right into it. I promise you this episode will be better than the first one. You might not laugh as much as the first one, but hopefully you get more information on books. I want to briefly touch on one of the books that I mentioned in episode 1, Dark Matter. Now, this is a sci-fi book that deals with parallel universes, and basically for every decision you make in your life, every fork in the road, one of you goes that way, and then you go on the path that you choose. And I don't know, I just couldn't wrap my head around. There's a lot of people that truly believe that there is parallel universes. And then there was a quote in the book that was saying how they were looking up at the stars, and those stars were created 4 light years ago. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know what that means. So I looked it up, and sure enough, the closest star that we could see with the naked eye is called Proxima Centauri. That star would take Voyager 1, the shuttle, 77,000 years to get to. So I'm thinking to myself, must be like a old caravan or something from the 80s. So I looked it up, and no, it's not. It actually travels at 38,000 miles an hour. It's just baffling to me. And I can't wrap my head around that. The stars you see at night, the light from those stars happened 10,000 years ago. And so I rated that book a 3.5. But if it was something I could wrap my head around, if you're into sci-fi and if you're into that sort of thing with the parallel universes, that's going to be a must read for you, a 5-star. So if you are that person, I would say, yeah, go for that. All right, and talking about stars, the next book, I read this last week, The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. This book I rated a 5-star. And with my rating system, I'm very strict with the ratings. So last year I started reading in middle September, like I said. I read 26-ish books. 5 of them were 5 stars. And this year so far, this is the second 5-star book that I've read. This was recommended to me by my Aunt Susie Q, who I think she said this was her favorite book of all time. And this book takes place in the 30s in Kentucky, and it's about 4 women on horseback that create and make and run a traveling library. And it was just a great book, an easy read, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I highly recommend it. All right, let's talk about Stephen King for a little bit here. I read Night Shift. I'm having trouble with Stephen King, to be honest with you. So you know that I read Misery last week, and the problem that I'm having is when I got into reading, I was like, oh, I think I'm going to love Stephen King because I love horror books, and I absolutely loved his movie Thinner. I loved Misery. I loved The Green Mile, and I loved The Shining. We actually stayed in the hotel where that was filmed in Colorado, and you stay in the hotel. You could stay in the actual rooms that are haunted, which we chose not to do. And any of the rooms, it's playing, The Shining is playing on a loop 24/7. So that was awesome. I really enjoyed that. But then, like, The Shining, the book is on my list to read. And as you know, I read Misery, and I didn't think it was as good as the movie. So far, let's see. I've read Misery by Stephen King. I read Later by Stephen King, which is one of his older books. And that I rated a 3. It was a good book, but it wasn't anything great to me. And then this book, The Night Shift, I DNF'd it after, I think it was 60 pages. I DNF'd it. And the rule of thumb, I think, is if it's not within the first 50 pages, just move on. There's just too many books that are, really good to read to waste your time with something that you struggle with. So, I'm kind of disappointed. Like, I don't know. Like, I own Stephen King's Duma Key. I own Thinner, which I'm going to read. And then 11/22/63, which everybody really raves about. So I'm hoping that could pull me out of this slump I'm in with Stephen King. But if anybody's read Stephen King's, which books of his is your favorite? A lot of people really enjoy 11/22/63. It's not only their favorite Stephen King, but their favorite book of all time. So I'm looking forward to reading that. So I'm not giving up on him completely yet. I'm just kind of disappointed, and I don't know if he's actually going to be for me. We'll have to see what happens. The other thing I want to talk briefly about that I mentioned, I'm reading the manga series of Akira. I read 3 books currently. That's the one I was showing you. I'm going to show you a little video, I'll show you a video on the side about how that reads from right to left, like an adult comic book, as I mentioned. And I was reading somewhere that the manga genre outsells fiction, which is crazy to me. And like I said before, when you go into Barnes & Noble, there's a huge section of it. So that Akira, I rated a 3. I do like the comic book feeling. I like the awkwardness of reading right to left, and you actually start the book from the back and go forward. And to me, the story isn't that compelling, but I do have on my list Berserk, which is another manga. I'm going to try that next. I will finish Akira, and then I'll try that one, and I'll see how I like that. The next thing I want to talk about, which I was going to talk about the first episode until that train wreck happened, but these are what I consider the 5 must-read books for you for 2025 because they were my 5-star reads for 2024. You got The Women by Kristin Hannah, which is about the nurses in Vietnam. That was a very good book. The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell by Robert Dragoni. I recommended this book to my mom, and she loved it, so I highly recommend that. And The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. When I did the video with my niece Juliana, I mentioned that I was going to read that, and I read it, and it was a 5-star. It was a great book. I mean, it's not like a happy-go-lucky romance novel, but it's one of those books that it's kind of sad, but it's kind of like life lessons. And that one, what I took away from was, if you got friends or you got family that you see someone is doing something wrong to them, step in and intervene. Because if you don't know what's going to happen, and you could regret it for a long time. So I do recommend that. And The Great Alone by Kristin Hannah. That was also a very good book about a family that gets up and, I think they lived in Washington, and they moved to Alaska, and they tried living in Alaska, and it's a really good book, and it just shows you how tough some people have it. And my number one book that I'm going to recommend. This was my number one of 2024, and none of the other ones even came close. Christopher Whitaker, my boy, All the Colors of the Dark. That is still my number one book, and nothing has come close to that one yet. So I did recommend that. My Aunt Susie Q is reading that now. My mom read it and she liked it, and I think my Aunt Carol is also reading that. So basically, that's the whole reason for doing these videos, and why most book vloggers do these videos, is to give you recommendations. And coming soon, once I get caught up with the books that I have from the library, I'm going to take recommendations from my subscribers, and I'm going to read those books because I love reading the different genres. So I'm looking forward to that. At the end of this video, I'm going to do a blip of what my favorite book so far is of 2025. It'll be just like 30 second outro. And then my 5-star reads of 2025. But really, as these videos go on, any book that I say is 4 stars, I would definitely give it a try. I mean, if it's 3, I wouldn't waste your time with it. But yeah, it's up to you. And also, next video, I think I'm going to talk about the reading goals that I set for myself for 2025, and Goodreads, and how Goodreads has their challenges too, where you read different books that they have, and I'm going to go over that and explain that to you too. So until next time, keep on reading.